ng iyong foreman or ng contractor mo or ng owner mo. Okay? Next, it should be brief. Okay? Una, it should be clear. Pangalawa, it should be brief. Only those characteristics or feature that will assure result should be specified. Hindi yung ang dami mong nilagay, pero iisa lang pala patutunguhan, ang dami mo pang nilagay, ang dami pang pasikot-sikot. Okay? Next, number 3. It should be definite. Okay? Confident or certain or well-decided. Hindi yung pabago-bago ka. Like for example, during the process of pre-construction, okay? Which is when you say pre-construction, it is under the design, okay? Kapag nasa design process pa lang, okay? And then, yung specification mo, nilagay mo doon, I like it white. Okay? Nilagay mo doon sa specification mo, white finish wall. And then, during the construction, iniba mo na naman. It should be gray finish. And then, after tapos na yung project, ay, dapat pala talaga red na lang nilagay ko. Ganyan. So, it should not be like that. It should be definite. You should be confident or certain. Okay? Although there are things na nagbabago, okay? But hindi yung to the point na every time na lang, every phase na lang ay nagpapalit ka. Okay? Because it takes time. Okay? Next, it should be fair. Fair from the client, fair from the owner, from the engineer, the contractor, or the builder. Okay? Fairness in specification means protection of the client, the contractor in every legal way. It should be fair. Hindi yung dahil gusto mo lang kumita, okay, kaya ilalagay mo yan kahit ayaw naman ni contractor or kahit ayaw naman ng owner. Next, it should be determinate. When you say determinate, it is fixed and have limits. Okay, hindi yung na-seal mo na yung deal and then magpapalit ka. Okay, you should always have that limits. Okay, hanggang dito lang. Period. Okay, hindi yung dagdag bawas ka na naman. Next, specifications should not be ambiguous. Sabihin niyo lang kung medyo mabilis ako or mabilis ako. Okay? So, specifications should not be ambiguous. When you say ambiguous, sabi ni Maring Miriam, okay, ambiguous, this is not expressed or understood clearly. And with regards to a specification, it should not have more than one meaning or interpretation. Like for example, ikaw as an engineer, okay? Or ikaw as the site engineer or the designer of the house. And then, if you're familiar with the CAD, yung cloud, okay? So, nakita ko to sa meme sa Facebook wherein yung cloud kasi na yun, there is a specified instruction about that. And then, nilalagay siya dun sa plan kapag merong ganon. Ngayon, during the construction, naglagay naman na siya ng butas ng hugis cloud dun sa building. Okay? And that is a no-no. Okay? Dapat pareho kayo or nagkakaroon tayo dapat ng toolbox meeting. Okay? Toolbox meeting, ito yung tawag kapag nagmi-meeting yung mga this is inside the construction. Okay? Kapag nagkakaroon ng meeting, diba kapag dito sa dito sa place natin, okay, hindi siya masyadong ginagawa. Meeting lang, ganyan, and then sasabihin lang ni contractor or sasabihin lang ni engineer kung ano gagawin mo, ganyan. But in the other areas, okay, pagdating sa Manila, okay, pag yung pangmalakihang mga building na yung pinatayo, okay, nagkakaroon sila ng toolbox meeting every day. Toolbox meeting, yun yung tawag nila kapag nagmi-meeting or ginagather around mo lahat ng laborers mo, lahat ng mga tao mo. And then, you will assign what are they going to do, Okay, so that is what we call the toolbox meeting. Okay, so back to the topic, for the specification should not be ambiguous. You should have that toolbox meeting, okay, bago mo ma-construct or bago kayo mag-proceed sa work. Okay, because there are certain interpretation na magkakaiba-iba. Okay, next, specification should not be unnecessary severe. Okay, ulitin, unnecessary severe. It should not be unusual or extravagant because it adds materially to the expenses. Wherein hindi naman pwede this is right. Ng bahay I have here an example of simple specification. Okay. What is inside the specification or the simple specification? Of course, you must have the name of the project, okay, the project owner, the owner's address, and the project location. Ito yung apat na nakalagay sa upper part ng specification mo. Usually, pwede din itong nakalagay sa plano. Okay? But there are some designers separate it. Okay? Para sa ganun, hindi nawawala. Okay? But there are some na nilalagay na mismo nila sa plano ito, sa gilid. Okay? Next, for the general condition, we have here, so ito lang yung mga laman ng simple specification natin, the name of the project owner, the owner's address, and the project location. Number 1 na nakalagay doon, the general condition. When you see the general condition, it is the total or the summary work done in the project. Okay? So the work under this project must confirm, let's say for example, the general condition, the work under this project must confirm or conform on the drawing of the plan or specified herein. All work shall under the supervision of duly qualified person. The building line must be laid out accurately within the intended area of the proposed building. All measurement must be carefully verified. The reference elevation shall be the top floor of the existing adjacent building. Okay? So all in all, when you say general condition, this is the general or the summarized work that you have. And then, after the general condition, dito na yung nahahati. We have the site works, the earthworks, the concrete, glass, okay, the reinforcing steel bars, the roofing and roof framing, the lumber and carpentry works, CHB laying, wall, column, beam, and floor finishes, doors and windows, glazing. When you say glazing, this is the glass, electrical works, and plowing works. And then under it, we have the bakit ko hindi sinave yung aking. So we have the name of the civil engineer or the designer, her PRC or his or her PRC registration, valid, I valid until, T number, and etc. So this is an example of a simple specification. As you can see, it is more on talks or it is more on worded instruction. Okay? So later on, as we're going to proceed to the detailed specification, makikita natin kung ano yung pagkakaiba nila. So right now, let's proceed to our module. Okay? Ano yun? Log, oo. Yes po, ma'am. Lag ba? Wait lang. Naglalag pa rin ba?
Hindi na, ma'am.
Hindi na? Okay. So, proceed na tayo sa detailed specification. Okay? For the detailed specification, on the other hand, it is mandatory as the design becomes more elaborate and parts of the structure are numerous and complicated. Okay. Kung kanina, dun sa simple specification, this is more on the more on the simple things that you need to do under the construction. But here in the detailed specification, this is more numerous and for the complicated part. Okay? So, ina-apply na siya sa for 2-story building, 3-story building, and more. And for those smart homes, ganyan. Okay? So, the materials and methods of construction of each part should be described in detail. Kaya nga siya tinawag na detailed specification. Now, for our specification, we have the classification of specifications. Okay? So, what are the classification of specifications? Number one, we have the product specifications. So, when you say product specification, it specifies the brand name product and its technical specification. Like for example, okay, the adhesive to be used in the tile adhesive is the ABC. Okay, so naglalagay tayo ng mga brand name. Like for example, the concrete, the cement to be used in the construction will all be ano na yung mga semento ngayon? Brand ng semento? Basta yun. Okay? So, naglalagay tayo ng mga brand name. Okay? Next, we have the installation specification. Okay, when you say installation specification, the goal of installation specs is to avoid this kind of problems. This describe in detail how a product is to be installed or applied. Installation specification is also the guidelines specification. Okay? This is more on the procedure and instruction specification. What are the things that we need to do on how to install a certain material or a certain part or a certain plan? Okay? Next, we have the quality standards. When you say quality standards, this goes into the great detail about the installation. Okay? This is more on the quality assurance. Okay? In order for us, as the engineer or as the designer, to ensure the quality of our product or the quality of our project, okay, we have the quality standards. Like for example, the strength of the concrete is 21 MPa. Okay? So yung mga ganon. Okay? When you say quality standards, it indicates what's the strength of the concrete, what's the strength of the steel, and etc. Okay? Next, we have the performance specs. When you say performance specs, this describes the standards that must be met rather than product of system to be used. Okay? From the word itself, performance, okay? What is the performance of what should be the product? Kumbaga, when you install, when you do that certain specification or apply that certain specification by the product or the what we call the kumbaga kung ano yung ini-expect mo na magiging performance nung certain thing or certain work or item of work na gagawin mo for that specification. Okay? Next, we have the special conditions. For the special conditions specifications, this covers a special measure required on the job due to poor weather. Okay? Whether it's too hot, too cold, difficult access, very steep or very sites, or wet sites, environmental concerns, and etc. Pag sinabi mong special conditions, okay, this indicates about the weather. Okay? So, ano yung mga, kumbaga, gives us the special condition specification. This solves the problems. Okay? Okay? So, like for example, merong condition dun sa site na hindi inaasahan. Okay? Like for example, yung pagtatayuan mo ng building mo ay dating wetlands. Okay? So, kapag sinabi mong wetlands kasi, continuous yung water flow doon. Okay? When you say special condition specification, ano yung mga ipapaloob doon? Like for example, nasa wetland yung pagtatayuan ng building mo. For the special condition, like for example, we will use Sahara, we will use waterproofing for the foundation. Okay? So that is under the special condition specification. Okay, now we have here the good and the bad or the poor examples of construction specifications. Okay, example number 1. A poor construction specification goes like this. Composite type decking, Trex or equivalent, fastened with hidden fasteners. What is that? Okay, so what do you mean composite type decking? What do you mean Trex or equivalent? What do you mean fastened with hidden fasteners? That is a poor type of construction specifications because the guidelines or the instruction is not clear. Okay? But if we're going to reconstruct it or rewrite it in a good construction specification, it goes like this. Decking to be 1-inch thick Trex transect composite decking installed with the Trex hideaway hidden fastener system in accordance with the manufacturer's written instructions, color to be selected by the owner. Why is it that it is under the good construction specification? Because as you can see or as you can read, okay, meron tayong number. Meron kang number na makikita. Meron kang color na makikita. Meron kang instruction na makikita. Okay? So that indicates that your construction specification is good. Why? Because it is clear. Okay? It is clear. It is ano na tawag doon? Ano na yung una kanina? Clear. Bitin natin. It is clear. It is brief. It is definite, fair, not ambiguous, and not necessary, severe, and not arbitrary. Okay? So that is the example of a poor and good construction specification. So sa mga iba, you just need to read na lang para mabilis tayo. Okay? Now, where to get construction specifications? Okay? So, later on na lang yung sample natin for the detailed specifications. Okay. Where to get construction specification? Number 1, of course, from the designer or from the engineer or architects. Okay? Why? Because they provide a specification as part of the design process. Okay? So, una, syempre, kailangan dapat galing siya kay designer. Okay? Hindi galing kay kapitbahay, hindi galing kay friendship, hindi galing kay internet. Dapat lagi kay designer, which is, or who is the engineer and the architect. Okay? Because it is the process of siyempre siya nga yung designer. Siya yung nakakaalam kung paano at anong gagawin sa project or dun sa plano. Next, from the contractor, of course. But take note, okay, if the designer does not provide specs, they generally come from the contractor as part of his proposal. okay, or range of from a minimal to comprehensive. Okay. Take note, class, the specification should always be and will always be from the designer or the engineers. Meron man tayo dito na nakalist, meron man tayong listahan dito kung saan natin pwedeng kunin yung specification, but the major, okay, source of specification should always be the designer. Like for example, kay contractor, yes, she or he can provide a specification, but it is for proposal only, and it should be approved by the designer. Okay, so take note, the major or the major specification should always come from the major specs source, okay, who is the engineer or architect or the designer. Okay, pwede mang magbigay si contractor, but still it is for just proposal, and dapat na i-approve ni engineer or ni architect or the designer. Next, spec writing software. Okay? Meron tayong mga specs writing software. Okay? Meron tayong mga app or software na ginagamit in the construction industry or for the specification writing software. Okay? But those things are still from the engineers and architects. Okay? And it should always be approved by the engineers and architects. Usually, itong mga spec writing software na to, madalang naman siyang ginagamit sa atin. Pero, siguro sa mga third world country, ganyan, or like for example, sa Dubai, okay? So, gumagamit sila nito. Or maybe sa Manila din, okay? But, as an experienced engineer, hindi ko pa na, I never had an experience regarding this spec writing software. Okay, so I have no knowledge about it, but I assure you that spec writing software gives also specification, but should always be approved by the designer. Okay, next we have the writing own specs. When you say writing own spec, this will come from the owner of the building or the owner of the project. Okay, but it should always be approved by the engineers and architects or the designer. Okay, writing own specs, the specifications will come from the owner of the building, what he or he desires. Okay, next, construction industry standards. Okay, when you say construction industry standards, a stronger approach that just referencing industrial standards is to cite a specific industry specification. Specifications will come from the manufacturer. Okay? Pag sinabi mo naman construction industry standards, this will come from the manufacturer, but still again, this should always be approved by the designer. Okay? Kasi nga, syempre, designer eh. Okay? So, though meron tayong construction industry standard, but it should always be approved or with the consent of the designer. Next, other published standards. Okay? So, other published standards, this is from the research. Okay? So, I hope you are aware that not all engineers are employed or napupunta sa civil works, okay, sa construction. Some goes to the academe, some goes to the management, some goes to the sales, some goes to the research, and from that research, this is what we call the other published standards. Like for example, okay, a researcher conducted this research regarding specification and it was published, it was approved, and with the consent of the law, ganyan, you can use it. But still, this should be approved by the designer again. Okay? So, next, another example of other published standards, we have the codes, the NSCP. the National Building Code, the Architectural Code, okay, the Plumbing Code, the Electrical Code, okay. In the construction industry, we have so much codes, okay, to review. Okay, next, we have the general requirements. Okay, so ito na yung mga laman ng ating detailed specification. Okay, number 1, we have the general requirements. Okay, when you say the general requirements, okay, for the general requirements, this contains the scope of works. Kapag sinabi mong scope of works, this consists of furnishing all items, materials, equipment, labor, plants, appliances, methods, and all operations that may be necessary and incidentals to complete excavation, filling, backfilling, and grading in accordance with the plans and schedule if any, and subject to the terms and conditions of the contract. Okay, what's within the scope of work? It contains the guidelines, what are the things to do, what are the description of works, and lastly, this also contains the contract. On how many days? Sure. On how many days that you're going to construct. Take note, class, another information. In the construction industry, magkaiba ang calendar days at daily. Okay? When you say calendar days, okay, it pertains from Monday to Sunday. Okay? That's straight week. We call that calendar days. Okay? So, kapag sinabi nating kapag lagi, pag sa mga contract, okay, kapag sa later on, kapag nag OJT na kayo, malalaman nyo yun. Okay? So, kapag sinabing calendar days, ibig sabihin non-stop yan. With or without weekends, okay, with or without holidays, okay, hindi kino-consider. Pag sinabi mo calendar days, okay, that pertains from Monday to Sunday. Ibig sabihin straight week kang nagtatrabaho, umaga man o gabi. Okay? Pag sinabi mo namang working days, that is from Monday to Friday. Okay? So, kung mapapansin nyo, or Monday to Saturday. Okay? So, later on, pag naging engineer na kayo, tapos nag-review kayo ng mga contracts nyo, okay, this is the timeline of the project within 24 calendar days. Pag sinabi niyan 24 calendar days, ibig sabihin straight yon na kahit na may natamaan na holiday or what, okay, it is not considered. Okay? Pero pag sinabing working days, ibig sabihin 25 working days, ganyan, okay? Monday to Saturday ka magtatrabaho, okay? And then off mo ang Sunday. Or you have 1 day to rest, okay? So, next, going back to the topic, under the scope of work, we have the general conditions, also sometimes the general provision, okay? Address the procedures for dealing with situations and problems that may occur with the contractor. This section addresses the legal aspects of the arrangement between the contractor and owner. The general conditions detail the rights and responsibilities of those involved in the contract, provide guidelines for administering the contract, define the legal relationship, and define the relationship among the parties affected by the contract. Example, subcontractors, the engineer, the construction manager, and etc. Sections within the general provision includes the definition and abbreviations, scope, subcontract procedure, control of the work, control of the materials, legal and public relations, prosecution and progress. These are the further subdivided into more specific topics. The specific topics depend on the nature of the project and are not always the same from one set of specification to another. Okay? Now, we have the general condition, the scope of work. Next, we have the kung kanina dun sa general provision, this contains the summary, the item of works, the contracts, okay, the guidelines, the conditions, the rules and regulation under the construction, okay. Here in the technical section, this gives us the description or the detailed specification or the detailed for every item of work. Okay? And what are the things na makikita mo every item of work? Okay? The technical section relates directly to the information on the construction drawings. Typically, the technical section is arranged in order of the way the work will be executed. As an example, a small commercial site could be broken down into the following items. We have the earthwork, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water line, pavement foundation, building structure, and landscaping. Within each item, there are 5 topics. Okay? So, take note, each item. Okay? Pag sinabi mo each item, that means every item of work. Like for example, structural excavation, okay? Structural concrete works, steel reinforcement works, and one ganyan. And ano yung nakapaloob doon? Okay? For the specification, dapat meron kang description. Okay? Description, this is a short description of the nature and extent of work and its pertinent features covered in the particular item. Like for example, the item 101, okay? Or item 111. Item 111, what is the description? Project work description. It is structural excavation. Ganyan. Next, for that certain work, of course, what are the materials needed? Okay? So, next, what are the construction requirements? Okay? What are the methods of measurements? Okay? So, alam niyo naman na siguro yung mga yan. And, lastly, what is the basis of payment? Okay? Pag sinabi mong basis of payment, this specifically describes those costs that are paid for under the contract price as defined by the method of measurement. Pagdating sa basis of payment kasi, the basis of payment for construction ay hindi per kung ilang material yung nabayaran ay yung nagamit mo or ilan yung tao mo at that day, but the basis of payment under the construction industry is how much materials or how much work that you put or how much effort that you put on that project. Like for example, kahit na binili mo lahat ng materyales, pero nandun lang naman nakastock at 20% lang nun ang naikabit mo, yung 20% lang ang babayaran sa'yo kahit nandun na yung project, ay kahit nandun na yung mga materyales mo. Okay? And that is the basis of payment. Okay? So, let's proceed to the detailed specification. Okay. So, this is an example of a detailed specification. Okay. Of course, we have the name of the project and the location. Meron din, may hindi pa ako naisali dyan, yung project owner and the title of the project and etc. Lahat ng mga personal information nakalagay lagi sa taas. Okay? Next. Ito na. Scope of works, technical specifications, and equipment usage. Okay. So, for the structure excavation, ito na yung sinasabi ko na we have the technical specification. Okay. For the technical specification, kung mapapansin mo, we have every item, meron kang scope of work. Okay, like for example, by structure excavation and common soil, CF or WF. Ang ibig sabihin ng CF, clay foundation or wet foundation. Ganyan. Next, under the item of work, we have the scope of work. Okay? For the scope of work, like for example, foundations for building and perimeter wall. Okay? Alin daw yung, ano daw yung scope of work, ano daw yung gagawin? Okay? Foundation. Magbubungkal ng foundation. What is the specification? What is the guideline? Okay? Excavation shall conform to the foundation plan. Okay? So, yung scope of work, foundation. For the building and perimeter wall, yun yung scope of work. The specification, yung instruction, anong gagawin. Okay? So, for example, in the area, the specification is excavation of all, okay, na it shall conform to the foundation. Ibig sabihin, magbubungkal ng lupa na nakabase dun sa ating foundation plan. Next, valid ba to as detailed specification? Yes, because it is clear. Okay, and it is specified. Okay, next, structural concrete. Again, scope of work. What are the scope of work? For the building, we have the footings, columns, beams, water, septic tank, roof gutter, stairs. Ano yung mga bagay na gagawin? Okay, including counters and lavatories, perimeter, footings, beams, etc. Okay, now what is the specification or what are the specifications? Dito na nakalagay. Kung papansin nyo, okay, dun sa ating malaking pagkakaiba niya dun sa simple specification natin. Why? Because, as you can see, it is worded and it is, kumbaga, in a general form. Okay? Unlike in the detailed specification, we have the details, okay, the tiniest detail that you have in the construction. Like for example, in the structural concrete, okay, in the simple specification, nakalagay lang doon yung gagawin. Okay, so this more on general term. Concrete class A mixture. Okay, class A concrete shall blah 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 blah. Okay. Materials, a minimum design compressive strength FC is equal to 20 MPa, blah, 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 blah. Maximum dropping, ganyan lang meron siya. But, in the detailed specification, lahat nakalagay. Okay? This is more detailed. Like, for example, specifications. All forms shall be plumb, level, and watertight. Okay? Clear cover in all beams, columns, and walls is 40 mm. Clear cover in footings is 75 mm. Okay? You can see the difference. There is more detailed, more clear instruction. You have the numbers, you have the dimensions, you have the areas, and etc. Okay? Next, clear cover in all slab shall be 20 mm. All pipes and fittings shall be installed prior to pouring of concrete. Minimum 20-day concrete is 3,000 PSI using Portland cement. Okay? Then, meron pa dito, meron pa ilalagay niya dito, use metal scaffoldings. Ano yung mga gagamitin mo? This is more detailed. Okay? And then, even the removal of forms, ano yung instruction? Okay? So, kapag wall yan or kapag vertical side of beams yan, okay, yung mga frames natin, 24 to 48 hours, pwede mo nang baklasin yung forma mo. Pag columns naman, dapat within 7 days. Okay? Dapat palipasin mo muna ng 7 days, okay, bago mo tanggalin yung forma mo. And also, for the removal of props to beams, length up to 6 meters after 14 days, bago mo pa siya tanggalin. Okay? And length over 6 meter, okay, after 21 days after mo siyang tanggalin. And take note, there are limits. Diba sabi natin kanina, there should be limits. Okay? So, this is a good example of a proper specification or construction specification. Okay. Next, like for example, in the reinforcing steel. Okay? Nakalagay din dito, bakit deformed? Okay? So, reinforcing steel meron kasi tayong iba't ibang klase ng reinforcing steel. We have the plain and we have the deformed. Pag plain yan, yun yung walang corrugated. And take note, kapag hindi corrugated yung steel reinforcement natin, hindi kakapit yung semento. Okay? That is why we use deformed. Pag sinabi mong deformed, this is the corrugated steel bar. Okay? Or the reinforcing steel bar. Again, nakalagay din dito ang grade. Okay? Grade 40. Meron tayong grade 33, meron tayong grade 40, meron tayong grade 60. Okay? So, sinasabi niya dito, naglalagay tayo ng anong grade. Okay? So, yun. Then, we have how to install the storm drainage and etc. Okay? And that is how to do or how to make or prepare your detailed specifications. Take note, dun sa detailed specification natin, dito din nakalagay yung provision of field office, ganyan, if it is rental basis, okay? Of course, every project should have project billboard, okay? Occupational safety and health, okay? Nakuha niyo na ba ang COSH? May I know? May subject na ba kayong COSH?
Hindi ma'am, kasi nung mag-enroll ng course biglang nag-pandemic naman.
Okay. So, ayun. Kung wala pa. Okay. And then, the last part, meron tayong prepared by. Hindi ko na nilagay. Pero ganito din lang yon. Prepared by the engineer, okay, or the designer, and then the other eligibility or license that they have. Okay? So, any question? That's it for today. Any question?
Wala ma'am.
Okay, if there is none, you can log out. Thank you for the day. That's all and see you next week.
Bye ma'am.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye po. Bye, ma'am.
Goodbye. Same time next week.